A $90 million budget and big feet on whatever format you saw it in, Tarantino's foot fetish is loud and proud once again. Once Upon a Time in Hollywood is not great, but I wouldn't necessarily call it terrible either. I just don't understand the 7-minute standing ovation Tarantino got at the Cannes Film Festival. There were a lot of the Hollywood types there, so that's the only way I can rationalize it. It really was his love letter to 1969 Hollywood, and with some of those, they're more in love with itself than anything. Visually, the movie is great. It's shot well, and he uses Dutch angles and jump cuts and other stylizations. The cuts are jarring and they're not smooth. It kind of looks unprofessional, but it was done on purpose rather than out of laziness. I thought they were effective in showing the emotional alcohol-induced imbalance of Rick Dalton. The Dutch angles stood out because they were pointing out something important or they emphasized a scene. They weren't needed, but he did it anyway. The film takes place in February 1969, 6 months before the murders of Sharon Tate and 3 of her friends, but it focuses on 2 fictional characters, Rick Dalton and Cliff Booth. The former is now a washed-up TV Western star, and the latter is the stunt double of Dalton. I don't understand why it needed to have Tate as a character other than as a distraction or filler, because she's treated as such. The only thing, unfortunately, that she's used for is to create tension for the events of a movie. The Manson family are of far greater importance in apparent screen time than Tate, and she's treated more as an afterthought. The pacing is not consistent, so the lackadaisical sequences made me question what was the point. It has a lot of filler. Actions happen, but they're inconsequential. This movie really likes to take its time. Sometimes I was like, why did they have to keep certain things because they added nothing to the film? I don't like style without substance. The beginning real-time sequence stares at a mural or painting that acts as a name tag for a parking spot. It feels too long until it finally zooms out, revealing the interior of a car, and Dalton and Cliff get into it. I also thought it was weird when it cuts to Sharon Tate playing records while Cliff is fixing something. I get how it's trying to be somewhat atmospheric and the film treats the music this way. It's mixed and presented to usually only appear when someone's driving a car with a radio on or playing records. Music is well selected in this film, but how on point it is for some moments push it into the cheesy or corny factor. The performances from Leonardo DiCaprio and Brad Pitt are the main reasons to watch this movie. Without them, this film wouldn't have any special or wow factor. Leo can play the idiotic jerks really well. The type of comedy stemming from his character is from just how full of himself he is as a fallen star. His bad, hammed up acting for his character is a sight to see. It's not acting class bad, but it's kind of astounding to see someone so proud of their work. Brad Pitt as Cliff Booth has a very cool demeanor, but a don't screw with me look. He's more likable than Rick because there's this notion that he's more capable and talented than Dalton due to his athletic abilities. He might not have the acting chops, but he certainly has the looks. There's just something about his history that hinders his career. I thought that the roles could have been switched for the pair, but they can't. I can't buy DiCaprio as Cliff, but I could see Pitt play Dalton. The casting ends up making sense. I wish I could say more about Margot Robbie's portrayal of Sharon Tate, but Tarantino doesn't give us much to chew on. It's more like she's here and you know what this movie is about. The character doesn't have much depth. He just gives her, hey look, I'm a star. I was in that movie. It's more like a dragged out version of the little Kardashian kids pointing their dad out giving a press conference on TV in The People vs. O.J. Simpson, American Crime Story. It makes sense considering that very few characters in this movie aren't shallow or not hippies. Speaking of the hippies, there's something way off with them. Their drug-fueled paranoia is apparent, and they create the most tension throughout the movie. There's just something about them that can all of a sudden snap, whether it would be due to drugs, Manson's implicit teachings, or a general distrust of authority or normal civilization. They don't have the utmost importance on an individual level, but they play up their role in the story well. However, this uneasy feeling I had was probably due to knowing what the family did. did. Even without knowing anything about that time in history, you can tell that they were somehow creepy because they're not like the average American. This one doesn't contain as much of the wit that he employs in his writing. It's a more relaxed film with moments of tension from time to time, whether it stems from life-threatening situations or just everyday stress. It's not completely devoid of the Tarantino dialogues, but they're used more sparingly in this film. It makes sense though, because Tarantino is at least more familiar with 1969 Hollywood. He has stated in interviews, namely the one with Jimmy Kimmel, that he remembers what that time period was like. He was 6. He lets the film just live and breathe on its own. It's more naturalistic, and although I wasn't liking the direction as I was watching it, I understand the lack of all that signature dialogue. It happens to be more pronounced during moments and sequences that feel wasteful or dragged out. Once Upon a Time in Hollywood is not Tarantino's best, and it fizzles story-wise. It's flashy and stylistic, but it has too much inessential filler. It has the right ingredients with the casting and the visual aspects. However, the execution isn't dynamic. The acting is really good from Brad Pitt and Leonardo DiCaprio. That's the big plus about this movie. I think the movie could have done a better job exploring these characters, but it wasted time going back to the past and setting up that atmosphere.